So that's what we're talking about, like, and metaphorically speaking. So right, we're trying to go from Hummer to Tesla. I was the metaphorical Hummer driver when it came to my content, and so we're trying to figure out how can I get more mileage out of that? How can I be more efficient? It's a little bit more expensive, right? 15% more. That we're talking about that 15% of extra effort that you can, like, you're going to break even. You don't have to buy. You're going to break even on gas in the first 2 months. You know, so that's what we're talking about today. Trying to cover 15 ways to get more mileage out of your podcast. So this is me. I am Nick. I host the Best Business Podcast 2015-2016 nominated Side Hustle Show. Do we have any Side Hustle Show listeners? Oh my God, like that question could have ended poorly. But yeah, that's what I do. This is my second FinCon. I'm really excited to be here. It's a really cool event. And I have the world's cutest baby. So, 15 ways to get more mileage out of your podcast, starting with number one. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes I made early on, was not starting with video. So, when we think about the three pillars of online content: video, audio, text. If you start with video, you can do all three. So that would be probably where I would start. And actually, I'm going to scratch that out, and I'm going to say start with live stream video. Because once you're doing live stream, you kind of have another element, like a new way for audiences to engage with you, and kind of get a behind-the-scenes look at it. I was really nervous to do live stream because it's like I like to edit the show, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Like I can edit out all the ums, and it was an interesting thing. But this is actually the most popular episode that we did this year. It was a live Blab session, and rest in peace to Blab. But so the guy on the top right is Don, the idea guy. And so we had the idea to do a live side hustle brainstorming session. And it was like a live listener call, like radio show. Now we're going live to Scott in Buffalo, New York, and he's got a question about. And so it kind of added a new element to the show. And it was really a lot of fun. And so I would start with a live stream video where applicable. And there are a handful of platforms. So Blab is dead. What I would probably go to today would be Hangouts on Air. Easy way to do that, but there's always different platforms coming up. What was cool about Blab was the live Q&A, and you could add people in, but that's what's going on with that. 12 months ago, it was Periscope. Periscope was the big thing at FinCon last year, and so dutifully, I went home and was like, I'm going to do more Periscopes since that's the thing to do. But a handful of the Periscopes that I did were repurposed into podcasts. And you can see not a ton of people, same as with Don, the idea guy, not a ton of people watching live. But for the people who were watching live, they got to see how the podcast sausage was made in a way. And, so like 50 views, 25 views, not a ton of people watching live, but that inside look, that higher touch point with that audience. Plus, they had the opportunity to interact, ask questions in a live thing. So it was like a new element to the show. So that was Periscope and the live stream stuff. So what are you going to do with the videos once you have them up? You can put them on YouTube. That's number two. And this probably took me 2 years before I even started doing this, which is this is the lowest hanging fruit of all. There are some incredibly talented video creators here at FinCon. Thomas Frank from College Info Geek and Ty and Talat, and I am not one of them. Like I would say I have the world's worst YouTube channel because it's placeholder image and then roll the tape, roll the MP3. And the crazy thing is, so most of these don't have very many views, 100 views, 40 views, but there's 50 people in this room. Like I don't think we're going to turn down an extra 50 people to listen to our show. I don't care where they come from. It's another avenue of discovery. It's another, I talked to a woman last night who was like, yeah, I'd listen to your show on YouTube because I can queue up the episodes and I can just, run it in the browser tab during work. And it's like another, very low hanging fruit, cost zero. Question?
That's a podcast then? So once it's...
Like I said, world's worst YouTube channel. It's just an image, and then you can hear the audio.
And the audio is your podcast?
Yes. So, but the crazy thing about this, so YouTube has a couple of benefits. Number one, giant search engine all on its own. Number two, it has an element of like virality in a sense that that iTunes does not, because once something starts to get a few views, once something starts to get some thumbs up, some comments, it starts to show up in that little sidebar. Hey, people also watched. You might also be interested in this. And some of these views have, or some of these videos, some of these podcasts have 10,000 views. One has 50,000 views, and it costs nothing to put this up here. It costs, just a little bit of extra time to do that. And that's very, very easy to do. The tool that I use to get this done is called tunes2tube.com. And it is a free service if you have files less than 50 megabytes. If you have files larger than 50 megabytes, I think you can donate like $10 a year to them. Or if you really don't want to pay them, you could like re-export your MP3 at like a lower bit rate or something. But very cool tool. You add your title, description, your tags. Do you have a question, Kim?
Yeah, do you run ads on those YouTube videos?
Just the podcast sponsors.
Okay.
Oh, YouTube AdSense monetization. I haven't. I should test that out. That would be another way to monetize. Good thinking. See, we're getting audience participation. So that's what we're going to do on YouTube. Very easy to get done. So what I would do is go through your archives and just, you might as well because it doesn't cost anything to do it. Yeah, go ahead.
When you do the live stream video,
Yeah.
are you allowed to capture that video? And
Yeah.
use that into YouTube rather than just the still image?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I would do that. So that's what we did with Don, the idea guy. So a handful of the ones that are video, they get a slightly better video than just the placeholder image.
I was just going to tie back into the AdSense question, just that Thomas Rink was like, someone told me to do AdSense, and I was like, well, I don't want to push ads on my viewers, and they're like, they don't think that way. They
Right.
took ads or take it for granted, they take it from YouTube, not you.
Yeah, that might be a good way to do it. Yeah, absolutely, because they just say it's part of the YouTube experience, not necessarily don't associate it with the channel. All right, so that was number 2, I think, YouTube. All right, number 3, lead magnets. This is the most important point of all. This is what has really driven the growth of Side Hustle Nation, I believe. So probably 70% of my email subscribers come directly from the podcast. And the reason for that is I've created episode-specific opt-in offers, episode-specific lead magnets, and I pitch them at the beginning and the end of the show. If I'm really organized, I would love to do it in context, but I think that takes a little bit of practice to be like, oh, they just mentioned such and such, and we'll be sure to link that at sidehustlenation.com, so whatever. So what I do is put together like a highlight reel of the episode. Like, here's the most important stuff that we talked about, and if you want to download that for your reference later, you can do that. I've seen people do like cheat sheets and checklists, and like Grant Baldwin does like an extended interview. You want the VIP part of the conversation? Like, yeah, just listen to half an hour with this guy. Yeah, I want to know what you guys talked about after you hung up. Like, that sounds cool. And so that's one way to get done. So that leads people back to the show notes page. On the show notes page, there are 3 different places to opt in and get that thing, top, middle, bottom of the page. Somebody clicks on that, opens up the lead box, name and email, lead pages sends them the file. The problem with lead pages is it's expensive, and it's like, what do they charge, like $40 a month? So I was kind of hesitant to make that investment. I mean, it's paid off many times over, but there are some alternatives. I think you can do this with SumoMe, with their like click triggered pop-up, and then you can set so click triggers a pop-up, email, and then you can set the, where to send people next. And then you can say, oh, just send them to the PDF file. So it would be sidehustlenation.com/upload/whatever.pdf. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Nick, do you ever use lead digits in the context of your show and collect emails that way?
I did it once, but haven't gotten around to doing it more. Do you use it? So lead digits is like text onion goggles, which is what this episode is about, to 22444, whatever their number is, and you could do it that way. I think that's really cool because people are usually not in front of their computer when they're listening to the show, but I've only put it on one episode, and I haven't checked lately how many people tried it. But yeah, I think that's a cool feature. Probably play around with it a little bit next year. Some alternatives to lead pages, because I was like really hesitant to sign up for another monthly subscription thing. Thrive Leads, I think, is still a one-time purchase. Magic Action Box is a cool little plugin that you can put, embed in your post or embed at the bottom of the post. I think they have a free version and a paid version. Pop-Up Maker is a free plugin. You guys can get the slides actually for all of this stuff at sidehustlenation.com/fincon16, and it'll. There should be. That'll just load the PDF version of the PowerPoint. And SumoMe, like we talked about, or the easiest method is just like paste the form code from MailChimp, from Aweber, whatever. The lead pages thing that I'm doing is a single opt-in. So if you want to do double opt-in, probably the easiest way to do it would be to, so somebody opts in, they get their confirmation email, they click yes, confirm, and then that thank you page is like resource central on your page. Like here's a giant list of all the possible lead magnets here, pick the one you want, or pick all of them. You opted in once, you can get them all the time. But this has been a huge driver, huge growth driver for me, and that kind of, I think, has led to the growth of the show, because now each week I have more people to email about the next show, which is the kind of I'm working up the pyramid from casual listener to consistent listener to subscriber to fan. That's kind of what we're working on. So like that Onion Goggle episode, that Amazon FBA episode, 6,500 people have been added to my list from that one episode. And that was on the back of 50,000 YouTube views. And for the sake of comparison, like the podcast has been downloaded 18,000 times, that episode. So YouTube was 3 times bigger on that, but that episode has that content upgrade, lead magnet, and 6,500 people have opted in for that. It's been big. It's been awesome. But that brings me to number 4, the email. Like, I'm curious, like, do you guys send an email like announcing your new shows? Handful of people. So I do, and I probably wouldn't do it if I had a daily show, but I do because I have a weekly show, and I do it because I know it works on me. Like I have a lot of shows that I listen to every now and again, but very few shows that I subscribe to. And so when if I somehow got on their email list and the host sends me a message, like Steve Chu is like really good at this. He writes, I'll hand it to him. He writes a good email, and I'm like, I want to learn about that. So I'll go download that episode. Tim Ferriss, another one. Like I don't listen to every one of his shows, but he sends me an email. It's like, that sounds good. I'll go check that out. And so that's kind of the theory behind this too, trying to move people up that ladder. And the email that I write is very simple. It's like plain text. Here's what the episode is about. Here's what you can learn. Here's a link. And also include a link to the highlight reel, to the highlight reel PDF. And that was actually in response to some listener feedback. They're like, why do I have to keep entering my name and email to get these? I'm like, oh, good point. Now that you're subscribed, you can just open your weekly newsletter and you can grab that stuff if you prefer to read instead of listen.
What do you link in the email? You link the YouTube?
I link the show notes on sidehustlenation.com.
But I mean, when you email, does it link to like a Libsyn page, or how do they consume it at the end of the link, your podcast?
So there's the podcast player on the site, or it just kind of shows, hey, you can download it from iTunes or whatever. Sorry, go ahead. So for the show notes, I kind of do maybe 300 to 500 words. And it's very much like, here's how I connected with this person, here's what you can expect to learn, here's some of the links and bullet points. And then in the highlight reel is probably 1,000 to 1,200 words. And it's like, here's specifically what we talked about, here's the tips that they gave. So, and it's a trade-off, right? Because you would like to have some of that content indexed and crawlable, but I found I've kind of gone down a different path, and it's been working for me. One way to repurpose your content, to get more mileage out of your content, is to do it in your podcast itself. And this is kind of taking a lesson out of TV that does this really, really well. You're watching the evening news, and they're like, well, stick around for the weather and the sports, at the very end of the show. Serial does this really, really, really well. Like previously on, Serial, they play clips from the last episode, get you caught up, and at the end, it's like, they tease the next episode. So I don't know if this will actually play, or if it will play loud enough. But I've been trying to do this, especially if you have like an episodic show.
Previously on the Side Hustle Show.
I like lean in.
I want to stop trading my time for money and dedicate my time to the
Can you guys hear that at all? Okay.
Like I said before, that I want to spend the time with my family, my loved ones. My parents came from the Dominican Republic. They're immigrants, and I'm the firstborn son. I'm the firstborn child, and I am currently the most successful, and I need to make sure that I can take care of my family, my brother, my sister,
okay.
both my parents, to make sure that nothing happens to them.
All right, we'll do that. So last year we did a series, it was like a public coaching series, kind of like following a couple characters along their side hustle path. And, so it was taking a cue from TV, say previously, here's what we talked about last time, try and take some sound bites from that, and then teasing out the next episode. Although in those we didn't really know what was coming next, but like, hey, stay tuned to hear more about Wellington's story. And then on the traditional like interview, where's the mouse on this? Interview show, just trying to like tease out.
Well, thank you guys so much for spending some time with me today. Until next time, let's go out there, make something happen, and I'll catch you in the next edition of the Side Hustle Show, where you're going to hear how my guest started a pretty sweet passive income business with just $36 and a bag of gumballs. I'll see you then. Hustle on.
Thanks for listening to the Side.
Yes. So, trying to get people, who maybe were casual listeners, like, oh, I just heard this one episode. Well, that sounds kind of interesting too. And now I'm going to stay tuned next week. In trying to move, this is the Nick Loper pyramid of podcasting greatness. You're trying to move people up this ladder, from strangers to listeners to subscribers to fans. And each one of these touch points, the same with the email, each one of these touch points is a chance to move people up the ladder where I can be of service, where I can be of value, help people out, and hopefully move people up the chain. But do you guys spot a problem with this pyramid? Yeah, the problem with the pyramid is the purple section. The strangers are the most. They're, 99.99% of the world has never heard of me. So that's my mission. You go out and conquest those people, how to get in front of those. So the next few points we're going to talk about are kind of like on the discoverability side of things. So we talked a lot about, once people are listening, how can we, get them to take more action? How can we get more mileage out of the podcast that way? Let's talk about some discoverability stuff. What's been huge for me in the last 12 months has been Pinterest. I never knew anything about Pinterest. Until I came to FinCon in 2015. Rosemary from Busy Budgeter took me under her wing, and she's like, come here, little one. Let me teach you the ways of Pinterest. So you can see nothing. After talking to her, kind of on a steady increase now, kind of a consistent 500 to 1,000 visits a day. I started out with less than 100 followers. And the cool thing is, it doesn't matter what your following is. It matters. The secret sauce was group boards. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So the group boards is like, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. There's 5,000 people following this group board that you can add your pin to. And so probably the best way to find group board, and we have a whole podcast episode about this, so I'll try and do the condensed version. The best way to find group board is probably to find somebody influential in your niche, in your space, and just scroll down to the bottom of their Pinterest page and look for these ones that have the little like two dot or two person like icon there. That signifies that it's a group board and that they have contributors. And if you click through to the next page, it shows who the group board owner is. So that first person listed in this line of circle heads is the owner of the group board, and oftentimes they'll have the instructions on how to join, what the rules are, in that little bio little section here. If you want to join, so she says, hey, we're currently closed for new pinners, but in the fine print, unless you're a member of the Facebook group, which you can join for free. And so, okay, let me follow the instructions and then email her at this address. And you can join this group board along with 500 other contributors, but 14,000 followers. And so a good way to get in front of those people and get that stuff done. Some tools, Pinterest tools that might be interesting. Pingroupie.com is like a cool pin group board like search engine where you can find, search by keyword and find group boards in your niche. I use PicMonkey to make my pins, and I'm not a graphic designer, as you'll see in a minute. And use pexels.com oftentimes for the to find stock images and stuff like that. Yeah, go ahead.
When you pin your podcast episodes, what are you pinning? Like, are you making a certain image for?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I'll make.
Square, is it long?
I make a tall image. I do 1,000 by 1,500 pixels, and it'll, oftentimes it'll be the title of the episode or like some other like hook that I think people might be searching for, and put it up there, and then that links to the show notes. And again, kind of like YouTube, kind of a viral element to Pinterest. That's kind of fun. So, this is how to build a six-figure blog. 1,700 repins. This is how to start a voiceover business. 3,100 repins, and it just has that viral element that none of my content had before discovering this channel. And so people link back, or they click back to the page. They can listen to the episode, they can figure, oh, this is something I want to check out, they can download it on iTunes, and that page has 3 email, if you don't want to listen to it, hey, you can grab the highlight reel right here, and join my email list. So that's been good. So sidehustlenation.com/Pinterest traffic, whole tutorial on how to get that stuff done.
While on that one still,
Yes?
because you don't mention it as podcast, when people come through, are they sticky? Do you know if they're that traffic, are they actually, oh, this is what they think it's going to be, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Pinterest traffic it typically has a higher bounce rate, right? And so I think Google Analytics or Google will recognize that, and probably not penalize you for that. I've had one comment so far that was like, "This is BS." This, like someone who didn't know what a podcast was, But one comment out of thousands and thousands of pins.
One thing that I've done with mine with Pinterest is I put my podcast logo on the bottom, so it's listed in on podcast, so people know that it's a podcast episode, and it also brands me. Like I feel like when people keep seeing people on my podcast with the image, it's like good exposure because even though people may not click, they just keep seeing my website over and over and
Yeah.
over again.
And I think that's an area of opportunity for improvement because it's like, there's no consistent branding on these images and stuff like that. So if you look at like the Penny Hoarder and the Thrifty Mom pod, it's like you can see some of their brand messaging on the pin images, which I think helps. Anything else on Pinterest? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you find that, because I do more stories, so it's not as action-packed, do you feel like for Pinterest it's still a good option?
I don't know, because think of it as a search engine on its own, like what people would be searching for, or if that would be like inherently shareable. I don't know. But, okay. Test it. That's the answer. Twitter, we won't spend a lot of time on Twitter. Twitter is what it is. But there's one cool tool that I think you guys should use. It's called Revive Old Post. What it does is, kind of crawls through your archives and post that stuff to Twitter. You can set the sharing intervals. You can say how often I want it to tweet. You can exclude certain categories. And what's kind of cool about this is it will use your WordPress categories as your hashtag. So if you have a category called blogging, if you have a category called investing, it'll say hashtag blogging, hashtag investing, hashtag early retirement. So I think that's kind of a cool tool. Number 8, how are we doing on time? Okay. All right, we're doing good. Number 8 is Facebook groups. And Facebook groups, like any community, like you can't come in guns a-blazing and be like, click on my link. But if you're a member of the community, if your guest is a member of the community, like I think you have a green light to start the conversation, to say, hey, and you can frame it like, I had the privilege of talking with fellow such and such group member, whoever it is. We talked about blank 1, 2, and 3. I thought some of the cool things they shared were, bullet point 1, bullet point 2. If you want to check out the full episode, click here. The other kind of thing I like to do in Facebook groups is if you have a famous guest, a celebrity guest coming up, you're like, hey, I'm talking to Neil Patel next week. Like, what should I ask him? Is there anything you want to know? And then you can get a conversation going in that thread. 20 or 30 people reply. And then once you air that episode, you can post the link in that thread, which bumps it back up to the top of the group. And if people still have notifications turned on for that thread, they'll get a notification, hey, maybe they answered my question or whatever. So how to find groups? You're probably already a member of half a dozen Facebook groups, but if I search investing, you go over to the groups tab, see what there is to see. Again, you kind of like embed yourself a little bit in the community before coming in, and like if your first post is dropping a link, like that's probably frowned upon. So try and be a member of the community first. Same thing applies really for LinkedIn groups. I was kind of surprised. LinkedIn groups are huge. 90,000 people in this investing group. I had no idea. But if you can build similarly, like become a part of the group, become a contributing member of the group, and then I think you have a green light to share your podcast in there. Does anyone use Clamor? Jeff, do you like Clamor?
I have used it. I haven't used it recently.
Yeah. Did you get any traction from it?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, early on.
Okay.
And I just got lazy.
Yeah. It's like I haven't used Clamor. So what Clamor is, it tries to be like the Instagram of audio, right? Like to help people discover new audio in 24-second clips. So if you have like a really juicy bit of your show, and that's where it takes the time is to find that 24-second segment that's really good, and you put it up on Clamor. So I don't know. Test it out if you want to give it a shot. Guest posts, this is number 11, has been kind of a really interesting angle for me, especially for the solo shows that I do, which doesn't happen very often. But I'm not the person who could like go unscripted and speak coherently for long periods of time. So I end up scripting probably 90% of the solo shows, and then I'm looking at this content and saying, it's 90% written. Like I might as well do something with it. And so turning those into guest posts. So a handful of examples was kind of like a recap of my Kindle book launch. Approached Steve Scott from stevescottsite.com, big time Kindle author, and posted it over there. It did really well. There was an interview show that I did with the flea market flipper, like Rob Stevenson, awesome story. And pitched that one to the Penny Hoarder. They said, that's right up our alley. I actually got paid for this one, so like a freelance writing gig. That was cool. And if you're already doing like similar like the highlight reel stuff, like this is a no-brainer. Like you've already got the content written for that. You just go and find an outlet for that, or find something that would be a good outlet for that. This one started out as a post actually on LinkedIn, where it went medium viral for LinkedIn, had like 2,000 views, which was a big deal for me. And then, turn it into a podcast as well. So trying to, if I'm doing those solo shows or even doing an interview show, like, okay, I don't want to have duplicate content, but how can I, use that same message and tweak it just a little bit? And so are those the exact same titles? Oh no, they're slightly different. It's like, okay. Okay, so number 12, this is where like actually money came in. So that Steve Scott post, people were joking in the comments like, this should be a book in itself, and like we were going back and forth, and it got a ton of great feedback. So I was like, well, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I could turn this into a course. So I expanded on it, threw it up on Udemy, where it now has over 3,000 students, and has gotten some 4.7 stars. Generally positive feedback, and has made over $10,000. So it was like, take what started as a podcast, turn it into a guest post. It's like the evolution of this content that you kind of start the ball rolling and see what happens. So number 13 is SlideShare. Do you guys use SlideShare? Yeah, of course. You should be giving this presentation. So SlideShare is, yeah, it's like a PowerPoint presentation marketplace. I don't know what to call it. Whatever. You put up your PowerPoint presentation. Maybe I'll put this presentation up there after the fact. But any like list post, any like if you're teaching on your podcast, like Omar's like $100 MBA, like perfect for SlideShare. Like you're teaching a lesson, you can throw some images, like create a nice looking SlideShare. The secret sauce to SlideShare, at least that I've discovered, is like giving it that initial push of social proof, of social sharing. Like you have 10 people, you probably collected 10 business cards here at FinCon. Like ask those 10 people, hey, would you mind tweeting my presentation? Would you mind sharing this on Facebook? And that kind of sends the signal to SlideShare that, hey, this is hot on social media. We ought to share this on our homepage. And that's where kind of the viral effect goes into play with SlideShare. So I've posted maybe 7 or 8 presentations there. 6 of them have landed on the homepage just by doing that, just like by giving that initial boost. And one thing and this like hurts my eyeballs. Like I told you, I'm not a designer, and it's hideous. Like especially 3 years ago, it was even worse. But it has 450,000 views. And what SlideShare is a high authority domain as well. So it ranks really well in Google. So it's another chance, kind of like YouTube, another chance for people to find you, to discover you. The cool thing is you're creating your presentation in Keynote, in PowerPoint, and then you're exporting it as a PDF, and it keeps your links intact, right? So if you have slides that link to Amazon affiliates or some other affiliate product, or your podcast notes, or your email lead magnet page, or landing page, you can keep those embedded in your SlideShare presentation. And I've seen some people doing some cool stuff with that, generating some pretty serious leads from that. Number 14 is books. This is like one of my favorite ways, because book is like the ultimate business card, and you can say, hey, I'm an author, but you have all this podcast content that isn't necessarily discoverable, and maybe people want it in a condensed form. And so where I think there's opportunity here is like if you ask a consistent question, like if you have your version of a lightning round, you ask a $500 question, you ask people for their best investment advice or their worst financial mistake, or how they paid down debt or whatever it is. You can turn hey, how 30 people paid off an average of $50,000 in debt. Like you can turn that into a book. So fellow FinConner and resident spokesmodel Austin Netzley has made a killing on this book called Make Money, Live Wealthy. because he used to have a show called Yo Pro Wealth where he interviewed 75 successful entrepreneurs. And he found over the course of those interviews 10 common themes or 10 common things that came out of that interview. Turned it into a book, has sold 55,000, well, he gave a lot of them away for free, but has moved a lot of units, developed a lot of authority in this space. And so that would be one way to do it as an interview show. And the other way to do it would be to just repurpose your interview, especially if you're summarizing the shows, if you're creating those highlight reel documents. Last year, somebody was like, Nick, you have a couple books out, but you don't have anything on side hustling. I was like, I can fix that. I have 100-something episodes about side hustling, so let me do this. And so I picked 10 and said, hey, here are 10 proven ways to make money outside of your day job. Here are 10 people who've done it, and put this up on Amazon. I actually made this one permanently free. The advantage of doing that was, I guess initially I had some guilt over charging people for stuff they could get for free on the podcast anyways. And the other benefit of that was just to use it as a lead magnet. So right now it ranks number 1 on Amazon for side hustle, which I don't know how many people are searching for, but it's more than 0, so it's worth something. It's generated 500 new subscribers. So right now it's probably getting downloaded, and this is a year and a half after it was released, getting downloaded 20 to 50 times a day. So it's not crazy traffic, but it's out there as an asset that keeps spinning, right? And surprisingly, when I added a paperback version of it this year, people are buying the paperback. Even though they can get the digital copy for free, they're buying the paperback, so it's earning royalties for me. So kind of a cool way to turn free podcast content that's already out there, is already created, into a book and make some money from it, generate leads from it, do all that stuff. And the final thing, point number 15, is public speaking. So you can bet that this presentation will find its way into a podcast, blog post, something near you, SlideShare near you. And there was a local TEDx event that was only like half a mile down the road from me. And I was like, hey, this TEDx event is happening. And so I didn't know really how they worked. What I found out after the fact was like all of the speakers were like in the network or once removed from like the organizers. But I was like, I don't know, I'll send a pitch. And they're like, do you have any public speaking experience? I was like, well, I have a podcast. And that was my foot in the door for the TEDx Livermore, the really prestigious event that it was. So. But it's another way to say, like, especially if you, to summarize, you're summarizing your podcast episodes, or you have some content, a consistent theme that's come out of it, or if you are teaching a lesson, to repurpose that into speaking on stages. So that's, I think that's where we're leaving off here. So Side Hustle Show, I like to say it's about ideas, action, and results. So hopefully you have some ideas you can put into action when you get home and see some results from. And I think that is where we're going to wrap this up. So the question is to ask how else can I use this stuff that I'm already creating? Like what's the extra step? And I'm 100% guilty of this. When I hit publish, like I want to be done with that thing, but saying like, okay, what's the incremental thing that I could do to